Okay, now what we're going to do is, now that you have a clutch pack all rebuilt and ready to be installed, we're going to put it in. If you're just joining us through, or if you've been following through in the walkthrough, you probably know that I've been building a Honda C50 engine, a Super Cub 50 engine. And there's a couple of changes I've actually made to the engine. I've realized, I already have a 50, well, it's actually a 70. It's a 50 with 70 upgrade. But I already have a 50, so to speak, and I really thought I want a 90, and so I changed it. So I'm going to go over a couple of differences on this bike. Firstly, you can see I have the large gear on here, the wide gear rather than the small one, if you remember that. I also have installed a 90 connecting rod. A 90 crankshaft. I've done the 90 crankshaft all around. The crankshaft is bigger on the 90. It is larger, as I've pointed out in videos before. So I've put the larger crankshaft in and the corresponding connecting rod. I just wanted something with more power. If you want to convert a 50 to a 90, really simply all you have to do, get the oil pump, the suitable oil pump plus oil pump drive, crankshaft, this drive gear, if it's applicable, you can use the old one if it's wide and the ratios are the same. And you need to get a clutch pack, plus of course your cylinder, piston and cylinder head plus cam chain. But that's what you need to convert a 50 to a 90 to. I just wanted to convert it. I wanted more power. I wanted something, because it's a 3-speed this one, so I wanted it to handle the wide ratio 3-speed better than the 50 would, in my opinion. So this engine, if you did notice, if you notice the larger connecting rod now, slightly different crankshaft and the different gear, that is because I have changed it, and that's why I want. So just a note on that one. So how to install the clutch. If you followed along in the clutch rebuild video, it's not too, or you're going to be at this point, you're going to need the completely assembled clutch pack. Everything assembled, ready to go, cleaned up, new plates, and rebuilt if you wanted to. And so that's what we are going to be addressing, is how to install it. Also make sure you have all your hardware, 4 screws here, triangle bit, the spring, all the washers and the castle nut. If you haven't bought a castle nut driver, please do so. I highly recommend it. I don't recommend smacking it together with a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. That's just, we're more civilized than that. New bearing if you want. This one is very good. It's so I didn't buy a new one. The arm, and you're going to have this collar plus the spring, which is over here. Okay, spring, and you're going to have this pinion plus the collar. Now this collar and pinion, I do like to get new ones, because if this collar or pinion ever wears out, or the collar especially, the clutch can seize and bind and cause all kinds of shifting problems. So if I don't know the price from Honda directly, I buy I actually have to order from Thailand to get some really good quality parts. Vietnamese parts are not very good. Neither are Chinese parts. For the most part, of course, some of them are going to be better than others. But the best quality I've actually found is typically from Thailand, made and manufactured in Thailand. They have a lot of Japanese factories over there, lots of Japanese business relations. I'm Japanese myself, and so I've been there, and I've seen they have a really close relationship with a lot of Japanese manufacturers, as I've said, and so they have a lot of good stuff that is made there. Not just because I'm Japanese, I'm not trying to be ethnocentric or anything. I'm just telling you that they do have, the stuff it's just better built. It's not because we're Japanese, it's just the practices they use to build this stuff is better. So for small pit bike parts, a lot of Thai stuff, genuine Thailand stuff, is actually really good. Just because you had a Kawasaki KLR 250 doesn't mean that everything from Thailand is rubbish, and so just wanted to point that out. And I personally have dealt with KLR 250 failure, complete engine failure, so I know it might be a little bit scary to buy Thai parts, but anyway, just wanted to mention that. That's because sometimes you can't really find good replacements for these, or these parts will be so expensive to replace. You think, why should I even bother? but you don't want to have something stupidly expensive or stupidly cheap. So that's why I say, all right, we're just going to go ahead. I'm not sure what's going on with my camera. It's going in and out. It's being dark, and it's going dark and light. I don't know if that's showing up, so if it is, I'm sorry. I have no idea what to do with that. It's just doing that on its own. So anyway, so these are the parts. Oh, and make sure pick up a couple of gaskets if you can. If you're going to be tearing it apart more than once, which is, believe it or not, it happens more often than you would think. Okay, let's go. Let's begin. First thing is you got to take the collar, and it can be installed either way. If you haven't cleaned this out, you see how there's a ridge in there? Wipe that ridge out with solvents, okay? Because a lot of grit can jam up inside that collar. So I would wipe that out very thoroughly and go over it with a brush. Also, sometimes you get junk in these holes too, so clean that out with a toothbrush. Don't use a wire brush. And this gear, just make sure that the gears don't have any abnormal wear. This one is still obviously in good shape. It's a very new gear from a very new cub. And what you do, you put the collar inside. You can put a drop of oil in there if you want. And what you're going to do is put it on the crankshaft. Usually the collar is going to actually fall down first. If it doesn't mesh with the... Oh, my screen's gone dark. I have no idea if it's dark for real. You want it to... Sometimes if you get stuck trying to put this in like this, all you got to do is turn the big gear a little bit, and then this will fall down. It's going to mesh very, very easily. See? So it meshes super easily. No binding. Make sure there's no binding like this, and that is that. Easy does it. The next part, believe it or not, is actually taking your clutch pack itself. Now what you need to do, there's two areas, so you're going to have two what I call clicks when you install the clutch pack. And what I'm talking about is there are two parts, two areas that the clutch has to clear before it slides on properly. And the first area is these splines. You see it's got 6 splines in there. And you're going to need to slide those over these splines, if that's the proper term, on the crankshaft. So that's the first area you have to slide over, are the splines inside there. You can sort of see it. I'm sorry, I wish I had brighter lights in here. And the second area are these little cutouts where these teeth attach. See? So it attaches in there like this, and that is where, and so you're going to have the first part to slide it in. It's going to click, so to speak, into the splined area on the crankshaft. The second part, you have to make sure that it kind of clicks into the housing, just like so. So when you put, and so I'm going to put it in right now. So let's get this going in. So take a clutch pack, of course, this side up. See if we can catch this on camera. So you see now the clutch doesn't want to drop in, so I'm going to rotate it slowly and wiggle, and now it has already caught on the crankshaft. It has already started sliding on the crankshaft, so that is good. But notice that it's not sitting quite right. It's okay, it made a thunk, but it's still not sitting quite right, because you can see there's still a bit more clearance before it's in all the way. And I don't know if we can catch this with the camera, but no, it doesn't look like it. But it's not the teeth are not sitting in the housing, that little spindle. So what I like to do is take this. Well, you can take any hand, of course, but I like to hold the teeth. So let's see if you can see my finger. Okay, so you can see my finger here. I like to hold the teeth of that gear steady, and then I'll, with my thumb or whatever, or a couple of fingers on top, I like to try and rotate the clutch pack independently of those teeth, so that the idea is that you can line it up. So you just kind of work it kind of rotating that gear. Sorry. So you rotate that gear. So this one's being a little bit difficult. Oh, it's actually gone in. I'm sorry about that. There is just a tiny gap, a tiny gap where the splines are not quite at the front. That is okay. It may have actually seated in the first place, so if I did that wrong, I apologize. The reason it's okay is because we're going to put this in next, this little tab washer, and you have to align these three splines, or these three tabs on this side, into one of the grooves, or in its corresponding three grooves. So you put that in there, and if it of course it's super open, so if that happens, if you've opened the tabs up so much for some very odd reason, bend them inwards just a tad, so that you can actually get the washer in there. So, and to make sure, this one actually fell in, but sometimes it doesn't do that. Sometimes the washer sits and it's not quite straight. So if that happens, what you want to do is just kind of rotate it around. There you go, you see it fell in. That means that those tabs have now fallen in the corresponding grooves on the crankshaft, and that's good. That is where you want to be. Next, take your Belleville washer, the one that says outside on it, and it even says these for Japanese models. It doesn't say it in Japanese, it actually says outside, if you're wondering. So outside, and the outside surprisingly is going to be facing outside. There you go. Just place it in there like that. If the outside is worn out though, there is going to be an area of the washer that is kind of beveled. So one side of the washer is going to be angled upward, and then one side is going to be kind of dished. You see how it's dished? Like that. And if you turn it over, it's kind of at an angle outward. So that is the side, that's the outside. So if the outside happens to be worn out, it's going to be this way. It's going to be the angle side, the dished side down. Okay, dished side down. Like that. And then the next part, take your castle nut, thread it on there, and there should be no binding whatsoever. It should thread very easily. If it doesn't thread easily, stop and take it off. Make sure that you're getting it to seat correctly, because you absolutely do not want to strip the threads on your crankshaft. That would be a bad thing. And then what you do, I like to use a strap wrench to tighten. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this on camera, but I take a strap wrench, I'll wrap it around the clutch, attach this to the castle nut. Sometimes it's a little fiddly to slide in there, and you tighten down the castle nut with this socket. You're going to need an extension if you have a dual side like me, because it goes the attachment's very deep, so it's not going to fit on a typical socket. And then you take a strap wrench which clamps this down, and then you give this a good amount of torque. You don't need to have a massive amount of torque. Sorry, I don't know Newton meters off the top of my head, but I do. Well, maybe I think it's only like 15 foot-pounds or something like that. Check your manual, because I'm at work right now, and I'm in my office. I have no idea, or I can't check. So check your manual. Give that a good tightening down. Okay, and we're going to assume that this is tightened down. The next part, what you're going to do is take your pressure plate. Now I call it a pressure plate, it's probably something else. I think they just call it the clutch cover. I'm used to car terminology. Of course, make sure it's clean. You might have the old gasket. If the old gasket has not torn, you can use it again. It's not going to be a problem if you use it again. I've reused many if I was lazy. Also beware that some aftermarket parts are not really brilliant fits. As you can see, this one, it doesn't really, I mean, it's not, I haven't seated it yet, but it doesn't really line up with the holes. So let's do this one-handed. It doesn't really slide on at all, and so just be aware of that. Some aftermarket parts are not really a good fit and finish, but shouldn't be a surprise to you. Then of course, line up your pressure plate like so, and get your 4 screws, 4 small ones, and then make sure that you have a very good fitting crosshead screwdriver for this. I think I mentioned in the clutch rebuild, what I do like to do is, if I can, I find some hex head stainless steel or just regular, zinc plated bolts. I don't have them with me. I like using hex heads because you can tighten them down very easily, but you can also take them off easily without an impact driver. Just make sure the screws are not aluminium, because those are too fragile. I used some from an RC car, and it didn't work too well. In fact, it broke. They all broke eventually. So you're going to tighten these down. Just give them a good cinch, okay? Just give them a good cinch with the screwdriver. So you bring it. I mean, you don't have to really super torque these down. They tend to get tighter actually after use. So there's no need to really super cinch these down with a lot of force. Okay. I'm assuming those have been, of course I haven't tightened them, but this is just the example. Next part, what you're going to do is take a throw out bearing. I call it throw out bearing, clutch bearing, whichever. This is the size 6006 with 3 noughts after it. And these usually slide right in, but if you have a relatively new clutch, sometimes this one slid in like that, see? So sometimes if you have a new clutch though, they don't go in like that, and you have to very lightly, I'm talking like even the end of a screwdriver, tap the outer race outside. So this is the outer race, and this is the inner race, okay? Inner, outer. Tap the outer race, just go around the edge like that. Just keep tapping it very lightly and it'll fall in. That's if you have a really new clutch. But you see this one just slid in with no problem. So no problem there. Next part, take this guy, and this notch or part is going to slide in the bearing like so, okay? And the way you want it to generally sit, this is mostly centered, and this circle, this recess is going to be at an angle kind of towards like this. Okay, you see how it's somewhat aligned with the shaft? You'll see why in a second. In fact, why not? I'll just do it for you. Take the arm, and you're going to want to angle this arm. Sometimes they have little where to install these holes. Actually, it doesn't have it on this one and on this shaft. I don't know why, and I couldn't tell you why. Some do it. Sorry, I bumped the stop recording button. Let's have to go back for a moment. This is going to be about the angle that this arm is going to sit, okay? About like this. It's kind of a, not quite 45 degree. I'm going to try and show you as well as I can. But it will look funny if you try and do it 1 notch too far over like this. You see how it just doesn't really, this doesn't want to sit very aligned. And that's just 1 notch over. So I'll take it another notch to the other side, and it just, I mean, I guess you could try and put it together like this. Well, no, you can't. It's not going to work. Okay. So if you're really worried about alignment, you really can't mess this up. It's very hard to do that. So it's going to sit like this, and you see how it aligns itself. Okay, so this side aligns with that little bit in there. So that's about how it's going to sit. It's kind of like a 40, not quite a 45-degree angle, but it will go together and look like this. Next part, you're going to take your collar, and there's only one side that this can, the spring can go in. So insert the spring in that side. See? And the spring doesn't go in the other side. Then what you want to do, actually you probably can just put the spring down in here first. And then just slide the collar in there. And then it should stick out a little bit and it will spring. It will be bouncy, I guess you could say. Next part, spring. And this one is a little bit tricky. You want to put it on this side of the triangle. Okay. And also notice how there's this little recess over here. That part is going to be down towards the shift arm, like that, you see. So if you put it in here, it's going to contact the shift arm. You don't want that. So you want the side with the recess towards the shift arm. And so it's a little bit, I'll do it again for you. You see where the spring wants to sit. And you can try sliding. You can put the triangle in afterwards. Just make sure that it's in the correct position, like this. This is correct. Okay. So that is what we. That is what you want with that. Now, at this point, you might be thinking to yourself, "Okay, that's all fine and good because your motor is sitting flat like this, but my bike tends to stand upwards. You know, it's my bike doesn't like to lay on its side, and that's typically considered a bad thing." And I understand that. So here is my advice on how to install all of this stuff on the clutch side because there's nothing holding it down. You see, it just wobbles like this. And this is the side where the clutch, this is how it's going to look. And so if you take it apart while your bike is standing up, how in the world are you going to put this together without, how are you going to put it together? Well, you have a few options. You can actually lean your bike completely on its side. You can do it, just try not to scratch it up. It will not ruin anything. I do it all the time. But if you, for some reason, you're just completely afraid of ruining your bike or scratching it or leaning it on its side, what I do is you can get some really tacky grease. And when you put it together, you can put, especially this triangle ball thing, you can put it on the end of the ball and glue it down somewhat when you're assembling it, and the grease will hold it, and that does work. But as I said, don't worry about tipping the bike on its side. It's just fine. It's not going to ruin anything. And proceeding on to the clutch cover bit. I apologize if this transition isn't very smooth in terms of information. I'm actually filming this about 3 days apart from when we were putting this on, so I've forgotten where we are exactly and what I've covered. So if I cover a few more things over and over again, I apologize. Anyway, but getting to the cover, if you haven't done anything to the cover, now this one you notice it's a bit flat, and the color itself is quite flat, and that's because it's only been primed. It hasn't been painted yet. First, what I'm going to talk about is the adjuster itself, the semi-automatic clutch adjuster. And that is this bit right here. Now, this bit, if you're going to install it, okay, so there's 3 components to it. The way to inspect it, this isn't a very clean one, I'm sorry, it's the only one I have laying around, but is the area you're going to inspect are these right here, these grooves. And what you want, now you can see there's wear marks on this one, and this particular one is over 40 years old, believe it or not. This is out of one of the very first C50s that had been one of the very first modern quote-unquote type of engine, so that's why it looks really old. The center part is new. What you do is you run your finger through here, or your thumbnail, and if you feel a really deep like where the wear mark is right here, if it feels deep to you, that is, then I would replace it, because that means it is worn down very, very far. But if you just see the, I guess you could say, scratch mark, the wear mark, that is fine. Just put it together. Yeah, don't worry about that. Just wipe it down, spray it off with solvents, wipe it down, and you'll be fine. This part, there's really no reason to replace it unless this area right here, where the screwdriver goes in for the adjustment, unless that is mangled, there's no reason to replace. That's why I put this one in, is because the original nut, the head had been really mangled up just by adjustment over and over, and it looked really bad, so I just wanted a cleaner one in there, that's all. And lastly, I just put the O-ring on here just so I don't lose it. You're going to have this O-ring, I don't know the size, I'm sorry, but you can, but get maybe 1 or 2 extra of these, because this thing, if it starts to go bad, it leaks, and then it leaks out the side of your clutch cover, and that can get quite annoying. This actually holds back a bit of oil pressure, so if you take off the ring entirely, it really pours out. I mean, a lot of oil will pour out of there, so I would just get 1 or 2 extra of these. Oops, I dropped it, for your future projects. So there you go, this ring. Just get 1 or 2 extra of these, and that is the one that goes, if you are looking at this side of your engine and you see this knot on here, you see the knot like that, the O-ring sits in here. In fact, you can see the area it sits in. You see it's a little bit recessed, or I guess cut out. That's where the O-ring sits right in here like that. No, it's not very straight. So that is the area. So as I said, yeah, just pick up an extra O-ring or 2, and you'll be surprised at how easy it is to lose these things. That's why I like to, when I take off the shifter, I like to keep it on here so it doesn't run away. And as I mentioned, here's the nut. It's a 14mm typically. I've seen 16 or 15. I think it was a 15mm on one of these weird copy motors, so I don't know why they do that. Maybe it's just all those available, but yeah, heads up. But usually it's a 14mm nut, and it looks like this. There you go. Okay, the last little bit, and I guess I should have mentioned this before, but I mean, if you're rebuilding your engine, you're usually going to have the available parts. You're going to order them in advance, but I'll go over this anyway. Your clutch gasket. This is a cover gasket. I've heard there are differences between the C70 and C90 and the C50. I don't know what those are though, because I've used the gaskets interchangeably without much of a problem. The only thing I can imagine is it has something to do with oil flow rates, but all the gaskets that I've been able to buy have been the same in terms of this channel right here. The only thing that I recommend though is that sometimes cheap gaskets, they're not cut very well. This one is, but you will see these stray fibers lurking around in there. You can see a couple small ones, that's okay. I'm talking about big chunks of gasket falling off. Also, sometimes what I've seen is that these are punched out, they're not cut, except for the punch is still in there. And so if there's like a punch but then it hasn't completely fallen out, then remove it with your fingers, because that's going to block your oil waste and that's going to be very bad. And so that is something I've seen. I assume that's more towards cheaper aftermarket, not entirely sure. Oh, you'll notice though, this one, I don't have one on hand. I wish I did, but I've been so busy I haven't had a chance to go to the market and buy it. But you see how this is the same material on both sides. Okay, it's high quality gasket. It's a very good one, but it's the same material on both sides. And as I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, I like these a lot more. Now this is a center gasket for an XR125, but this, you can see it's got the paper side on one, but then it has, I mean, you can't feel this, but it has a rubberized side on the other. And this is really great stuff, because whenever you split the cases again, or whenever you split or you remove the clutch cover, in this case, this whole side just pops off. It seals brilliantly, but then it just comes apart. It does not tear, it doesn't adhere to one side of the case, and it makes a really clean, makes it a clean separation, so you can reuse the gasket over and over. So if you have the chance, buy the gasket that's double-sided like this. One has like a rubberized side, and one that is just the regular gasket material. As I said, I didn't. Actually, I get this stuff from Thailand. The stuff available locally to me is really rubbish, and so this comes from Thailand. But I didn't have a chance to pick up an extra a double-sided gasket. I don't go to Thailand that often. But yes, so that's my last bit of information I want to share with you there. You can see the seal. Moving on to the clutch cover, you can see the seal is not in there. I will cover that in another video. I'm going to go through all the seals, and yes, but for now, you don't have to worry. If the seal is still in there, you don't have to take it out if it wasn't leaking. I just wipe down the inside with a clean rag, and maybe a little bit of oil and clean rag, and that's it. If it was fine, you can leave it. If it's relatively new, you can leave it. Yes, so but yeah, of course there's no seal in this one. When you're inspecting, some people, they ask, well, actually nobody asks me, so that's a lie, but if you want to inspect your cover, if it's worn out at all, there's two places. Well, inspecting for wear. So there's two places. One is the inside of the kickstart area, and the best way to really just look at it is look and see how round does it look. You'll be surprised at how good your eye is, or I guess your brain in this case, at discerning if there's just a tiny bit of out of roundness. So try and center yourself looking at it. And if you see that the bottom part of the circle seems like it's a bit longer than the rest of the circle, then that is possibly worn out. This one, if you center yourself, you can see is a really tiny amount of elongation at the bottom of the hole, right in this area, but not much. And so it's okay. This cover, I will use it again without any problem. And the second place to look is in here. And this is where the tail end of the foot shifter, so it's this actual end right here, is what goes into here. And over time, if you have a really heavily used or well-worn cub, you're going to see this hole start to elongate, and you can actually see this one a bit better. You can see down here it's worn out a little bit more. That is, I'll be honest, that is borderline of what I like. The cover I was originally going to use on this one was a lot better, but I think I just gave it away to somebody. But anyway, I used that cover, and that one had a perfectly round hole. In fact, here, I know this is not the same instance, but you can see this hole. Take a look at the center, how it's just completely circular. But then you come down to here. Even if I center myself, you can see right here, it's worn out a bit. As I said, it's a bit borderline, this one. I know it'll work fine, but just in my opinion, in my personal taste, I don't like to use stuff that's about this worn. If I had a choice to purchase a new one or a good one, I'm going to say new one, a good one, I would just go ahead and do that. I've bought aftermarket covers before, and I'll tell you, they are really thin, and they're usually finished very poorly. If you want to tell which one is original, you can see it says YSK in here. Sometimes they say HM, which is a Honda Motor Company, and it'll just be in the circle. In fact, I don't have any parts here that say HM, sorry. So it would look like this. You will see a logo like this, or HM. That's a genuine cover. But just my opinion on Pitbike covers, the ones that I've bought, and I've bought several, I'd say at least six or seven of them off the top of my head I can think of, and the metal itself is really thin. and I really hate that. It feels really cheap, feels really flimsy. It feels really light too. If you pick this up, I mean, you can tell it has, I wish you could feel this in the video, but if you pick one up next to a really cheap cover, there's a big difference. I really don't like the aftermarket covers. I would much sooner get a used but fair condition cover instead of going for a new one from a pit bike supplier or an aftermarket supplier, unless the aftermarket supplier is a pretty well-known brand, known for quality, not known because there's billboards everywhere. I mean, known for quality. So that is my advice on this. And as I said, that wear mark right there is a bit borderline for me, but I'm going to use this anyway because I don't have a choice. I don't have any covers available to me right now. And so yes, that's relating to the covers. Last bit, these guys, these alignment dowels, they are this is something I would order extra of. Okay, I would order extra of these. There's junk in here. Come out. It won't come out. Okay, I'll get it later. But I would order extra of these because when you remove, I mean, if you have to remove them from your case, sometimes they get stuck in the cover, and sometimes they get stuck in the case. And if you have to remove, especially with old bikes, they get mangled super easily if you remove it with vice grips or pliers or whatnot. So I would highly recommend ordering a total. That is, if you have an old engine, okay. If you have a relatively new engine like this one, where it only has, I think the cases only have about 10,000 kilometers on it, and the rest of the engine, most of the engine hasn't even cracked 1,000 yet. So, but I would order, especially if you have an older engine, I'd get 6 of these. Okay, actually no, excuse me, 4 of these, and there's also 2 more that go over here. But sometimes those vary in size depending on what kind of engine you have. So I'm going to recommend 4 of these. And when we put the top end on, I will talk about these dowels too. Okay, so onward to installing this bit right here, which is the top side of the semi-automatic clutch mechanism. I'm not going to be tightening it down or doing I guess you could say a final installation, so to speak, because obviously the cover hasn't been painted yet. But I will show you, of course, the assembly process and how it goes. First thing is first, what you want to do with your adjuster, that is, of course, if you've taken it off. Actually, I like to do this with every adjuster, so I loosen. Of course, if it's installed on your cover, you're going to have to pull off the nut, and you're going to have to slide this out through the bottom of the case, the cover. And what I'm going to do is I always tighten this clockwise. Okay, if you see how it sits. How this adjuster works actually is that as your clutch plates wear and as other parts of the pack wear, the sandwich, so to speak, if you remember from the clutch video earlier, the total width or height, however you look at it, the total thickness, there you go, of the clutch pack is going to get smaller and smaller because bits and material are coming off. And so it's like when you have to adjust your brakes, when you adjust the brakes on these, the cable brakes, because the material is wearing off and off more and more, you have to tighten the brake spring so that the brakes will still contact the outside of the drum. And it's very similar, or the inside of the drum, and it's similar to this, is when the clutch starts to wear out more and more, it's going to shrink. And so the distance between actually disengaging the clutch or contacting the clutch with a shift of the arm and pushing down the clutch so that it disengages is going to be greater, and so you need something to take up the slack. And that's what this bit is. So when you undo it, when you turn it counterclockwise, anti-clockwise, whichever, you understand that, you see how this starts to come outward. So that this is the piece that mounts on the case. So if you are loosening it, or if you're turning it anti-clockwise, actually that would be tightening it, it will push this plate down more. If you turn it clockwise, you see the plate will sit higher. And so that is what you're doing when you're adjusting the clutch, is that the plates start to wear out. And this piece, by the way, fits on top, just like that. It's a little hard to do. There you go, it fits on just like so. And so when the clutch itself starts to wear out, the pack, the plates, the friction discs, this will start to sit higher and higher. And when you need to have this shifter actually push down, the shifter here going to push down on the pack, it won't be able to reach because there's a big gap here. So what you're going to do when you adjust it is you turn this anti-clockwise. Just imagine the case, because remember the case is going, or the cover is going to be in the same place all the time, and it's going to take up that slack this way. That's how the adjuster works on this. So when you're rebuilding your pack, the reason I'm talking about this is because when you rebuild the pack, it's going to be thicker than it was before, because you're adding new friction discs in, and they're going to be fatter, and so it's going to take up the slack. So what I'd like to do is turn the adjuster all the way, turn it clockwise all the way, so that it sits up as high as possible. That way, when you're putting the cover on, it's going to take up, it's not going to, the adjuster will not contact the shifted ball, I guess you could say. It won't contact the clutch pack just yet, and because of that, you'll be able to put the clutch cover on without having to fight the adjuster pushing down on the clutch pack, which can get a bit annoying. So so when you take this off, or if you do take it off, or whichever, if you're pulling off the cover and you're rebuilding a clutch, I like to turn this all the way clockwise. Okay, anti-clockwise is tightening it. You see, anti-clockwise is bringing this out, and so I'd like to tighten it all the way down. Next, obviously if the adjuster is inside the cover, you don't have to do this part, but notice how you have two holes. You have the one on the left and the one on the right. And it's pretty self-explanatory. The one on the left is for this pin right here. Oh, I'm pointing at the viewfinder. There you go. Pointing at this, it's pointing at this pin. This hole goes for this pin, and this centerpiece, the adjuster, goes through that hole that goes all the way through. And you have to really make sure that it goes in, and this can come off easily, so you have to make sure when you install it, see, try wiggling it back and forth, and it might wiggle in place like that, but it won't spin. What I mean by spin is it won't do this. If it spins in place, that's no good. That means you've missed the hole, as obviously we've missed the hole. And if you do that, the clutch just won't work. So obviously you want to, I'm not right-handed, so obviously what you want to do is make sure that the pin goes into the hole, but when you turn it over, maintain pressure outwards on the adjuster, because it can skip out of that hole very easily. Don't ask how I know. And so, as I said, maintain pressure with your finger. I mean, it doesn't have to be really strong, but just make sure that it doesn't come out. And then what you're going to do is install the O-ring, which is that guy right there, and then you can put the knot on top of it, and we'll do that right now. Now I want to note that the screw is going to stick quite a bit higher up. It usually sits completely flat with the edge of the nut, but because I haven't finished painting this case yet, I don't want to tighten this down all the way. So I just want to show you that the adjuster usually sits completely flat. It doesn't have a recess, it doesn't fall in like that. It will sit flush with the nut, but like I said, I'm not tightening it down because I haven't painted the case yet. At this point I like to put the dowels in the case themselves, but if let's say they're a bit rusty and they get stuck in the cover, what you can do is you can leave it there, but what you have to be aware of is when you're installing the gasket, in fact we'll put the gasket on now. When you install the gasket, the reason I like to put them on is because these maintain the gasket in its place very, very well. You can see. So, but let's say you have this one. It's a bit stuck in there actually. So, but let's say it's not in there. The gasket might sit in this one just fine. But what would happen is that it doesn't quite sit well, or worse, it can actually come off as you're trying to set the cover and land in the engine. And of course that's no good. But another small thing that can happen is, let's say it's close like this. You see it's not completely centered. And when you put the cover down, you can actually punch out part of the gasket. I've done that before in my earlier days of working on things. And so I like to have both both dowels, alignment dowels in the engine itself, just so that it maintains the gasket being in the correct position. All right, now as long as this is together, as I've said, the nut isn't tightened down because actually you don't even need to tighten the nut down because you're going to adjust the clutch first, but after we put the cover on. But yeah, like I said, it's because I haven't painted this yet. How you're going to install this, it's very simple. I like to remove the dipstick if you haven't done so already, because I like to use the dipstick as kind of a grab hole, and then I feed it over the kickstart shaft. Okay, the kickstart shaft right there. And sometimes it takes a little wiggling. This one goes on. It should go on about that easily though. If it's binding or something, you see how I don't need to use much force. It will slide on and off like this. You don't need force. If it's binding in a hard way, it'll be a little bit slightly more difficult if you have the seal in there. I'll address seals in another video, but you will. But it should not be really. You should not have to pound anything. It should just slide right on. Now at this point, you'll notice that it doesn't quite line up with the dowels, and that's not because you've done anything wrong. Interestingly, it has to do with the kickstart itself. If the Kickstarter sits, let me go. It sits a little bit this way, and so when you put the case in, the Kickstarter itself will actually push the case. You can see from, if I draw a straight line. In fact, why don't I put a bolt in there so you can see? You can see where the bolt actually goes to, and it doesn't go in the hole. It does not want to align. Even if I push the bolt over, it doesn't want to align. That is because the kickstart is pushing the motor over. So a lot of times what I've seen, especially with the relatively novice mechanics, is they think, oh, it's really hard to get the cover on, so they start banging on it and it doesn't want to go in. All you have to do is pull on the Kickstarter this way. So you pull on the Kickstarter and sort of push the cover like this, and it will slide in completely without issue, without a problem. I'm going to try and show you with one hand if I can. So what you do is you want to push the cover this way, and you want to kind of pull on the Kickstarter, or just maintain a pressure pushing the cover this way, because that will push the Kickstarter more into place, and the cover will completely align itself, and it will literally fall down. See if it'll do it for me now. Knowing my luck, it won't, but we'll try. So you push, you just maintain. Don't think I can do this. Oh, actually it's starting to go. And you can give this a few bumps. Oh, there you go. So it's just started to go in, and it has fallen almost all the way down. But if you see me bump it, just very, very simply, it's gone almost all the way down. Actually, it will go down as soon as I tighten the bolts. Back here, slightly off. See if I can nudge that into place. See if I can do this with one hand. And there you go. I'm sorry if I missed that in the camera, but you see it's mostly down. If I give it a few more bumps just with my palm, it actually, I mean, this is nothing to worry about, but you saw how easy that fell on. When I tighten this down with bolts, it will sit completely flat, and that will be fine. But you see how easily that went down? I was using the palm of my hand, okay, just the palm of my hand, and it fell down completely. And that's how easy it is to seat the clutch cover That's how easy it should be. If it's not that easy, if you're stuck on something, if you have to use a hammer, or if you think you have to use a hammer, stop. You're doing something wrong. Okay, I've mentioned this for finding case bolts, but since some people only want to replace the clutch, I will show you how to find the bolts. Now let's say you're not really sure which bolt is which, or you see over here where I've just got a bunch of bolts. This is one of about 50 tins that I've got full of bolts. All you need to do, well, okay, on this motor, you're going to have 7 of the same length, relatively short bolts like this. I don't know how many millimeters they are, I didn't bring my measurer today. And you're going to have 2 long ones. The 2 long ones are the same length, and the 7 short ones are the same length. Obviously it's different for secondary clutch engines. Well, that's not really relevant. So you see 7 of the same length, and those 7 actually, they just go in the short holes. Go all the way around and they go in the short ones. And then the 2 long ones go in this one, can't see. This hole, you can see it's a bit long, this one's short, and then this one's long. But if you're not sure which bolt is which, all I want to show you is the appropriate amount of, as I always say, meat the bolt is going to have when it sticks out. You see, that is how much meat you want to have. So let's test another bolt, and you see it's got the same length of bolt sticking out. That's sufficient. That is good. That's how much thread you want sticking out. Oops. But you see, so you can see I'm just dropping lots of different bolts in, and that is what you want to see. It's that much meat. See, just like this. If it happens to be shorter, and I'm not sure I have a short bolt with me, like that one fits. I'm not sure, I don't think I do actually. So I can't show you in proper example. Oh, I do. There you go. Lucky me. Now you see, if it sits in here like this, that is not enough. I mean, it'll work if you don't tighten it down much. And I've done those, used those in a pinch when I've had bolts break off on me. But optimum, I guess, the optimum amount of thread is this. So you want it to look like this and not like this when the bolt was sitting in. You want to have it looking like that. And that's how you can change, it's how you can choose your clutch bolts as you are putting your engine together, and you have to pick them out from a pan or something. You didn't have them organized. So yeah, that is how you choose your bolts on that. I'm not going to tighten this down, like I said. I haven't painted the case cover. That is that. Lastly, what you're going to do is, if you haven't, I will get to the clutch adjustment later, but perhaps for another video. But once you've bolted down your cover, and I don't use much torque actually. I just have a quarter inch ratchet, and I'll just grab the head and I just turn it, just give it a snogging down with the head. That's it. I don't use the handle at all. I don't need to put a lot of torque down, and that is enough torque to hold down the clutch cover. There's no need for more than that. But then what you're going to do, I highly recommend doing this, because oftentimes it's not that it's super crucial and that your engine's going to explode if you don't, but I adjust the clutch while you're at it, because I tend to forget. I will, because I'll work on the engine and then I'll put it on the shelf and I'll forget where I'm at, and so I'll just adjust the clutch right there. So I recommend doing that, and once you do that, that is literally the end of how you put together the clutch side. That is everything. As I said, of course, put your bolts in. I'm not doing it in this video, but that is how you take apart, take off, disassemble, rebuild, repair, whichever you need to do, and reassemble your clutch cover.